Germany's rise from the ashes of World War I to the terrifying height of its power in World War II remains one of the most rapid and unsettling transformations in all of modern history. In just a few years, a defeated, economically broken, politically fractured nation became the most dominant military force on the European continent. To understand how this happened, one must go far beyond the usual explanation of military buildup. Germany's rise was not simply about producing tanks, aircraft, or soldiers. It was the result of a total transformation: political, economic, social, industrial, diplomatic, psychological, and military. It was the result of exploiting a wounded society, manipulating a desperate population, and mobilizing every system of national life for one purpose: expansion through war. And in the end, the very forces that drove Germany's ascent would cause its catastrophic collapse. But the path to power, both astonishing and brutal, deserves to be understood in full. Germany's starting point after World War I was catastrophic. The Treaty of Versailles imposed crushing reparations, stripped the nation of territory, limited its military to 100,000 men, banned tanks, aircraft, and submarines, and placed the blame for the war solely on Germany. The humiliation was as psychological as it was material. Millions of Germans felt their nation had been stabbed in the back by internal enemies and betrayed by international ones. The collapse of the Kaiser's monarchy and the creation of the Weimar Republic did nothing to resolve the underlying trauma. Instead, the new democratic government was blamed for accepting the terms of Versailles. Economic disaster soon made everything worse. Hyperinflation in 1923 destroyed the savings of the middle class. People carried wheelbarrows of currency just to buy bread. Within days, life savings evaporated. When the economy stabilized briefly in the mid-1920s, the sense of relief proved short-lived. The Great Depression of 1929 plunged Germany into a deeper crisis than almost any other European nation. Unemployment soared to 6 million, nearly one-third of the workforce. Industrial production collapsed. Poverty spread, political tensions rose, and extremist parties, Nazis and communists especially, grew rapidly. Many Germans felt democracy had failed them. They looked for answers in radical ideologies that promised strength, unity, and revenge. Into this turmoil stepped Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist German Workers' Party. The Nazis presented themselves as the only political force capable of restoring Germany's honor, rebuilding its economy, crushing communism, and overthrowing the Treaty of Versailles. Their message resonated with a society that felt weakened, betrayed, and humiliated. Hitler was a charismatic orator, able to articulate the frustrations of millions. But the real power behind the Nazi movement was its ability to manipulate emotions. Through carefully orchestrated propaganda, massive rallies, visually striking symbolism, youth organizations, and promises of revival, the Nazis created an image of unstoppable momentum. They offered certainty in an uncertain world. They offered enemies to blame. They offered the return of a strong Germany. When Hitler became chancellor in January 1933, Germany was not yet powerful. It was still economically fragile and militarily restricted. But within months, Hitler dismantled the Weimar Constitution, eliminated political opposition, and centralized all authority under Nazi rule. The Reichstag fire allowed him to crush civil liberties. The Enabling Act gave him dictatorial powers. Trade unions were abolished. Other political parties were outlawed. The press was censored. The judiciary was subverted. Germany became a one-party police state almost overnight. Power was consolidated, not for its own sake, but as the foundation upon which a new Germany, strong, unified, militarized, could be built. One of the first steps toward rebuilding German power was covert rearmament. Even before Hitler announced anything to the world, the Nazis began secretly expanding military training. Pilots trained through civilian flying clubs. Tank crews trained in the Soviet Union, away from Western inspectors. Factories were quietly instructed to prepare for wartime production. Military planners developed doctrines and strategies that would later shock Europe. Officers were promoted based on merit and loyalty, allowing young and innovative thinkers to influence strategy. Simultaneously, the Nazis embarked on a massive economic revival program. Public works projects, most famously, the Autobahn highway system, created jobs for millions. While publicly presented as an economic improvement scheme, the Autobahn also had clear military value: rapid troop movement across long distances. The regime also expanded state control over industry. Factories were reorganized to maximize output, and businesses were pressured to align with national goals. Companies like Krupp, IG Farben, Messerschmitt, Heinkel, and Daimler-Benz became arms of the government, producing tools that could be quickly converted into war materials. Germany's economy recovered not because of free market growth, but because of massive state intervention, forced labor policies, and enormous military spending disguised as civilian investment. Propaganda played a crucial role in Germany's rise. Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, created a culture where dissent was nearly impossible. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, films, books, posters, and school lessons all reinforced a single, unified narrative. Germany had been stabbed in the back, humiliated by its enemies, and betrayed by weak leaders. Only the Nazis could restore Germany's greatness. Citizens were bombarded with messages about racial purity, national unity, and the inevitability of German dominance. Hitler was portrayed as an almost divine figure. The Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls indoctrinated children from an early age. By 1935, an entire generation was growing up in a world where Nazi ideology was not simply an opinion, but a total worldview. In 1935, Hitler openly defied the Treaty of Versailles. He reinstated military conscription, expanding the army from 100,000 to hundreds of thousands. He announced the formation of the Luftwaffe, Germany's air force. He began building tanks in large numbers. The Western democracies, Britain and France, protested but took no action. Traumatized by World War I, they hoped appeasement would prevent another conflict. Their hesitation convinced Hitler that they lacked the will to stop him. Germany's rise depended not only on its own actions, but on the inaction of others. However, Germany's growing military strength was not built solely on numbers. Its rise was accelerated by the development of a new doctrine of warfare. Unlike many nations still preparing to fight the next war like the last one, Germany embraced speed, coordination, and mechanization. Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, was the result. Although often simplified as a tank-heavy strategy, Blitzkrieg was a system that integrated tanks, mechanized infantry, artillery, aircraft, engineers, and communications. What made Blitzkrieg revolutionary was the use of radios in every tank and most vehicles, allowing units to coordinate in real time. German officers were trained to take initiative, make rapid decisions, and exploit opportunities without waiting for orders from high command. This flexibility contrasted sharply with the rigid command structures of many other armies. Blitzkrieg aimed to break enemy lines quickly, bypass strong points, encircle large formations, and collapse enemy morale before they could mount an effective defense. It relied on shock, speed, and psychological impact. While Germany transformed its military, it also expanded its geopolitical reach. In 1936, Hitler remilitarized the Rhineland. French forces could have easily pushed Germany back, as the German troops were under strict orders to retreat if challenged. But France hesitated, and Britain took a conciliatory approach. Hitler's gamble succeeded. This emboldened him further, and he later described it as one of the most significant turning points in Nazi foreign policy. In 1938, Hitler engineered the annexation of Austria, known as the Anschluss. German troops marched into Austria without resistance, greeted by cheering crowds. Germany suddenly gained millions of new citizens, expanded its territory, and strengthened its economic base. Later that same year, Hitler demanded the Sudeten land from Czechoslovakia, claiming to defend ethnic Germans. Britain and France, unwilling to risk war, agreed to the Munich Agreement, which handed the region to Germany. But Hitler wanted all of Czechoslovakia. In 1939, he occupied the entire nation, seizing vast industrial resources, including the highly advanced Skoda arms factories. This acquisition dramatically boosted German armament production even before the war began. Germany's growth into a military superpower was now fueled not only by internal mobilization, but by the absorption of foreign economies. Germany had become the industrial master of Central Europe. Its military had grown in size, skill, and technological sophistication. Its population was unified under a totalitarian ideology, and its enemies remained hesitant and unprepared. The invasion of Poland in September 1939 demonstrated Germany's new military doctrine in devastating fashion. Tanks, motorized infantry, artillery, and aircraft worked together to break through Polish defenses with incredible speed. The Luftwaffe destroyed airfields before Polish planes could take off. Polish resistance was brave but overwhelmed. Within weeks, Poland collapsed. Britain and France declared war, but they launched no major offensives. The period they followed, known as the Phony War, allowed Germany to prepare for its next moves. In April 1940, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. These operations secured critical shipping routes and prevented Britain from establishing a foothold in the region. The invasion showcased Germany's ability to coordinate land, sea, and air forces in complex operations. The most dramatic demonstration of German power came in May 1940 with the invasion of France and the Low Countries. The Allies expected a repeat of World War I and heavily fortified the Franco-German border with the Maginot Line. But Germany bypassed the fortifications by sending its armored divisions through the Ardennes forest, a region Allied planners believed too difficult for tanks. The German advance was swift and decisive. Once through the forest, German forces drove rapidly to the English Channel, encircling massive Allied armies. The British Expeditionary Force narrowly escaped at Dunkirk, but France fell within 6 weeks. The defeat shocked the world. France, considered one of the strongest military powers in Europe, had been crushed with unprecedented speed. Germany appeared unstoppable. Following these victories, Germany controlled most of Western and Central Europe. Its industrial base expanded dramatically as conquered nations were forced to contribute to the German war machine. Factories in France, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, the Netherlands, and Poland were integrated into German production. Millions of forced laborers from occupied territories were used in agriculture, factory work, and military construction. Germany exploited resources across the continent: coal, iron, oil, food, and industrial output. By 1941, German power rested on not only its own economy, but on the economies of nearly all of Europe. Yet even at the height of its power, Germany carried within it the seeds of its destruction. Hitler's ambitions exceeded the capacity of the German state. The decision to invade the Soviet Union in June 1941, Operation Barbarossa, was driven by ideology, not strategic reality. Hitler believed the Soviet Union would collapse quickly, but he underestimated the resilience, manpower, and industrial depth of the Soviet state. The initial German advances were massive. Millions of Soviet soldiers were captured. Yet the vast distances, harsh winters, logistical challenges, and fierce Soviet resistance slowly ground down German forces. The Soviet Union could relocate factories deep into the Ural Mountains, beyond the reach of German bombers. Germany could not replace losses as quickly as the Soviets could. The Eastern Front became a war of attrition that Germany could not win. Compounding Germany's strategic problems was the entry of the United States into the war in December 1941, with American industrial production added to that of Britain and the Soviet Union. The combined resources of the Allies far exceeded what Germany and its Axis partners could ever match. Allied manufacturing output dwarfed German capabilities. The United States produced thousands of aircraft, tanks, and ships every month. Germany, despite remarkable engineering innovations, could not keep up with the quantity or pace of Allied production. Nazi ideology further undermined German power. Racial policies led to the persecution, enslavement, and murder of millions of Jews, Slavs, and others. These atrocities were moral horrors, but they also weakened Germany strategically. Potential collaborators in Eastern Europe were instead oppressed or exterminated. Forced labor, although abundant, was inefficient due to brutal conditions. Ideological interference in military decisions caused strategic blunders, as Hitler often overruled experienced commanders and diverted resources to ideological goals rather than practical ones. Germany also suffered from administrative chaos. Nazi governance was fragmented, with overlapping authorities among the Wehrmacht, the SS, various ministries, regional leaders, and Hitler's own personal directives. This lack of coordination hindered wartime production and decision-making. Only in 1943, under Armaments Minister Albert Speer, did Germany streamline production. Speer increased output significantly, but by then the overwhelming industrial might of the Allies made it impossible to catch up. By 1944, Germany faced relentless Allied bombing raids that devastated cities and factories. The Soviets pushed from the east, while the Western Allies advanced from the west after the D-Day landings. Germany fought desperately, but could not overcome the overwhelming strategic disadvantage. Its armies were exhausted, its soldiers outnumbered, its economy strained, and its cities in ruins. The same aggressive expansion that fueled Germany's rise now stretched its resources beyond the breaking point. In May 1945, Germany surrendered. The nation was left in ruins. But the story of how it rose so rapidly remains a profound lesson. Germany became powerful in World War II through a combination of political manipulation, totalitarian control, economic mobilization, industrial expansion, technological innovation, revolutionary military doctrine, diplomatic opportunism, and exploitation of foreign weakness. Yet this power was built on foundations that were ultimately unsustainable. Overconfidence, ideological extremism, strategic overreach, and moral bankruptcy. The transformation of Germany from a defeated nation in 1919 to a continental superpower by 1941 is one of the most extraordinary and alarming episodes in human history. It reveals how quickly a nation can rise when driven by authoritarian leadership, unified ideology, and aggressive ambition. But it also demonstrates how such power, built on coercion, violence, and reckless expansion, inevitably collapses. Germany's rise and fall are reminders that rapid national resurgence under dictatorship may create immense short-term strength, but almost always leads to long-term devastation.